Welcome to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're getting into a concept that might feel pretty personal for a lot of people listening. We've been looking at an article by Larken Rose titled, "You Sold Your Soul."
Right. And we should probably say up front, this isn't about religion in the usual sense.
Exactly. Rose uses that phrase, selling your soul, more as a metaphor.
Yeah, a metaphor for, well, compromising your own deeply held beliefs, your principles,
Right.
for the sake of, say, political loyalty or fitting in with a group.
So our mission today, our deep dive, is really to unpack this provocative idea.
See what resonates? Maybe offer a way to think about our own consistency, especially in, the political world we're in.
And it's important to note, Rose aims this critique broadly.
Oh, definitely. He doesn't pick sides. He looks across the whole political spectrum.
So let's start there. When Rose talks about your soul, what exactly is he referring to in this context?
Okay. So for him, soul isn't supernatural. It's your core self.
Like your fundamental values.
Exactly. Your deepest convictions, your moral compass, that inner sense of right and wrong, your truth, essentially.
Oh, right. The things you really believe in, deep down.
Yes. So selling that soul, in his framework, means betraying that inner compass.
And what does that betrayal actually look like, according to Rose? How does someone sell their soul?
What happens when you consciously go against those core values?
Okay.
When you choose loyalty to a political leader, a party, some kind of group, over what you genuinely believe is right?
So prioritizing the group over your own principles.
Pretty much. Putting allegiance first. Kind of makes you think about that human need to belong, doesn't it?
Yeah, how powerful that pull can be.
Sometimes powerful enough to make us ignore our own judgment.
Which I guess leads us into the trickier part. The examples he uses, he talks about hypocrisy on both the left and the right.
He does, yeah. He doesn't pull any punches.
Okay.
So he looks at conservatives, folks who traditionally champion, say, due process limited government, and he argues that sometimes you see these same people excusing or defending actions that seem pretty authoritarian, or at least push constitutional boundaries.
But only when it's done by leaders they support.
That's his point. It raises that question. Are principles fixed, or do they shift depending on who's in charge?
It's like the rules change if your team is winning.
That's a good analogy. And he does the same for the other side. He looks at liberals.
Okay, what's the critique there?
Well, liberals often strongly advocate for individual liberties, like bodily autonomy.
Right.
But Rose argues that during, say, the COVID pandemic, the support for certain government mandates or the role of pharmaceutical companies,
Yeah.
well, he felt that sometimes seemed at odds with those core principles of personal freedom.
So maybe a willingness to accept things in a crisis that you wouldn't normally?
Perhaps. Or maybe it shows how complex these issues get. His central point, though,
What's that?
is that people on all sides often tolerate or even actively support things done by their team that they would condemn if the other side did it.
So overlooking potential power abuses here, maybe shifting on personal freedoms there. It sounds like he's saying group identity can just override our own values sometimes.
Exactly. That tribalism, that sense of us versus them in politics, it's incredibly potent. And this actually leads Rose to question something even more fundamental,
Which is,
the political system itself.
okay, now this sounds like it goes deeper than just individual actions. What's his critique of politics overall?
Well, Rose argues that even the act of voting, he sees it as a form of submission.
Submission? How so?
His view, which comes from voluntarism, is that by voting, you're essentially agreeing to place a ruler, a master, over yourself, and importantly, over others too.
So participating means accepting a system of potential coercion.
That's how he sees it. And he believes this inherent element of force almost inevitably forces you to compromise your values.
Just by taking part in the system, you're kind of setting yourself up for these moral trade-offs.
That's his assertion, yeah. He thinks it creates an environment where morals become, well, transactional.
Less about right and wrong, more about what helps our side.
Precisely. Does it benefit my faction? Does it hurt the other guys? Principles take a back seat. He gives an example to make this clearer.
Okay, what's the scenario?
Imagine someone who, maybe a few years ago, was really vocal about due process, innocent until proven guilty, all that.
Standard stuff, yeah.
Right. But then their preferred leader gets into power. And maybe that leader starts talking about or even doing things like arbitrary arrests or really pushing executive power. Suddenly, this person who championed due process goes quiet. Or maybe even finds ways to justify it.
And Rose would say that's not a genuine change of heart about justice.
No. He'd argue it's likely a betrayal of their own stated principles, done out of loyalty or convenience, or wanting their side to win, whatever the cost.
Wow. That definitely makes you think.
It highlights how easily abstract ideals can get bent by concrete political goals.
So Rose paints this pretty stark picture of potential compromise. But he doesn't just leave it there as a condemnation, does he? He pushes for self-examination.
Absolutely. A big part of his message is the need for serious self-reflection.
Like asking ourselves some tough questions.
Exactly. He basically asks, have you made excuses for bad behavior from people or groups you support? Are you silent now about things you would have shouted about in the past?
Those are uncomfortable questions.
They are.
Yeah.
And according to Rose, if the answer is yes,
What does that imply, in his view?
it suggests you might have, in his terms, sold your soul. That maybe loyalty or tribal identity or just wanting things to be easy has become more important than truth or integrity or courage.
It's a heavy self-assessment.
Definitely. And he connects this personal level of compromise to much bigger things, too, like historically big.
You mean the rise of tyranny. How does he make that link?
He argues this isn't just some abstract philosophical point. He sees a direct line between individuals choosing loyalty over principle and how oppressive regimes gain power.
So dictatorships aren't just imposed from above?
Not solely, no. His argument is they're often enabled from below. By ordinary people making small compromises, choosing silence, prioritizing their group over basic justice.
Making these individual choices seem much more consequential.
Exactly. He's saying these aren't just personal failings. They can pave the way for widespread authoritarianism. It puts a lot of weight on individual ethical choices.
And again, we need to stress, he's not targeting one group here.
No, absolutely not. He's very clear. His critique applies universally. Conservatives, liberals, libertarians. Even people within his own voluntarist circles aren't immune if they compromise their stated ideals.
So the message is consistency. Stick to your principles no matter what.
That's the core of it. Even when it's hard, even when it makes you unpopular with your own side.
Okay, so if someone reads this or hears us talking about it and thinks, ouch, maybe that's me sometimes, does Rose offer a way back, a path to, reclaim that integrity?
He does. He offers what he calls his final challenge. It's very direct.
What is it?
He essentially says, speak up. When someone you've supported does something that goes against what you truly believe in, say it out loud.
Break the silence.
Yes. He literally says, say out loud when someone you supported goes against what you actually believe in. That is the only way to regain your soul.
Choosing truth over that blind loyalty, even if it causes friction?
Exactly. Even if your own group criticizes you for it, that act of speaking out is, for him, the path back to integrity.
And just to frame all this, understanding his broader philosophy helps, right? The voluntarism thing.
Yeah, it does provide context. His fundamental belief is that all human interaction should be voluntary, based on consent, not coercion by government.
So his critique of politics isn't just about Democrats or Republicans.
No, it stems from a deeper skepticism about the legitimacy and morality of state power itself, and the compromises he thinks it inevitably demands from people.
Right. That makes sense. It helps understand the foundation of his argument.
Yeah.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive into Larken Rose's You Sold Your Soul, the main takeaway seems to be this intense focus on moral consistency.
Yeah, especially in politics. He's arguing that prioritizing your political team over your actual principles is a dangerous path.
You risk undermining your own integrity, maybe even enabling things you'd normally condemn.
And, just to reiterate, our goal here wasn't to say Rose is right or wrong or to endorse any specific politics.
No, it's more about using his pretty challenging ideas as a prompt for us all to maybe look a bit closer at our own values and how we live them out.
Right. How consistent are we, really?
Which leads us to that final thought for everyone listening today. Thinking about Rose's points, maybe ask yourself, where in your life, maybe politics, maybe elsewhere, might you be putting loyalty or just convenience ahead of what you genuinely feel is true or just?
That's a deep one.
And maybe even more pointedly, what would it actually take for you to speak up when you see those core values being compromised, even when it's awkward or unpopular?
Yeah. What does it take? Something definitely worth thinking about long after this conversation ends.